Hey, you guys. I'm going to wait on YouTube to catch up and show me that you guys can see me. I was actually trying to figure out how to get music tapped in, and I'm doing good to have the thing up here and the thing over here. So maybe I'll have music for you guys next time. But anyway, hi. If you guys don't know me, if I'm new to you, welcome to Spectrum Straight Talk. I'm Jodi Carlton. And I have been working with folks on the spectrum for over 15 years, really. And but more recently, in the last several years, I have started just working with adults on the spectrum for doing relationship work. So some of you may be in my private Facebook group. Some of you have found me here. Some of you were referred to me. But I have a full service coaching program for you guys that really covers lots of different things that you guys need help with. So I recently added autism screening to the docket. The last I checked, there was one appointment left in May, but I think there were two people vying for that. So I haven't added any more of those appointments to my schedule yet because June is really booked up for me already. I'm actually taking a little bit of time off. Yay, me. And then, but I'm also already booked up for other coaching stuff. So if you're interested in an autism screening, I should have those available again in July. Something else I wanted to make sure you guys know, when you can actually get a membership with Spectrum Relationships. I'm pointing up there because this is Spectrum Straight Talk, but you can have a membership and that will get you group coaching with me once a month. So like here, I'm talking to you, I'm talking at you. But if you actually become a member, uh, you can get on a Zoom call and talk with me. So we talk together. I'm not just answering your comments in the chat. So the next group coaching session is actually this Thursday, May 20th, and that's at 3 p.m. Eastern. And that's once a month, and you have access to the replay, but it's really better to be able to be live. So if that time doesn't work for you, I know that's difficult, but if that time does work for you, that's a really great option for you to actually talk with me. And our basic membership starts at $45 a month. You guys, you also will get access with that membership to the Spectrum Straight Talk library of videos, which is right at 100 videos, Q&A sessions. Some of the videos are only 2 or 3 minute clips. Got them all organized for you by category. Some of them are longer training type videos that I've got for you. So for $45 a month, you get access to that and you get group coaching with me. So if you want to get in on that for this week, be sure and go over to the website at spectrumrelationships.com. And there's a memberships tab at the top. So we also have private coaching for you guys. I do some private coaching intensives. I don't have availability for that until July. But if you think that that's something that you want to do, that's for couples who are really ready to make some changes and to grow in their relationship. The first step to that is to get on a consultation call with me, and we talk about whether or not that's a good fit for you. And if it's not, then we figure out what is a good fit for you in the program, because we start with the basics, you guys, communication basics. And so I have a course and a coaching group about communication. I also have a private coach that works for me, Debbie King, who does some hourly type coaching. So anyway, we've got lots of stuff for you. But let's get to today, which is Spectrum Straight Talk, which this is basically an Ask Me Anything Q&A. So you guys can start dropping your questions in the chat here, and I'm going to, usually that starts going. But I also have several, like 5 or 6 submissions that some folks sent to me, to my team this week, and they wanted to submit an anonymous question. And you can do that as well. I do these lives every week on Tuesday. Now I'm going to be off a couple weeks in June, and we won't have them scheduled here. But if you have a question that you want me to address on a live, then you can and if you don't want to post your question here in the chat, then you can submit that to us at support at spectrumrelationships.com. I'll type that up for you there. So what I'm going to do right now is start with the questions that were submitted to me anonymously, and I will keep an eye on the chat here. So any of you who are here who want to submit your own question, or if you want to comment on the question that I'm answering, please do so and interact with me, because I like talking to you guys. So the first question is, she said, this is regarding my husband. He was recently diagnosed with early onset dementia at age 51 with no family history of it. I believe his diagnosis should actually be Asperger's. Brain tumor was ruled out with MRI. What further testing could be done to differentiate the two or see if they both exist? So, all right. First thing I want to say is this: if you're watching, your husband is 51, and hi Rianne, how are you? Your husband's 51 and is now getting this diagnosis of dementia. So if your husband has Asperger's as well, this is not something that's going to just now show up in this decade of life. So if he has Asperger's, he's always had Asperger's. So one of the questions that I want to know is, and you're asking, what is the further testing to be done to determine if it's both? So dementia is a degenerative brain process, and there's a lot of different types of dementia. There's Alzheimer's, which people have heard of. It's a myth that we automatically start to get dementia as we age. We don't. That's a myth. So dementia means that there are some visible signs, usually measurable, that can be seen on scans or different types of imaging, that show that the brain is functioning at a different kind of level than what is typical. And the thing is, we can't see autism on a brain scan. We can't see it on a brain scan. There's not a diagnosis. We're starting to actually, our neuroscience is starting to get fairly advanced, and we're starting to be able to see some of that, but it's not the kind of thing that you can just go get a brain scan for autism. It's not something that you would want to pay for in the tens of thousands of dollars, or that any insurance company is going to pay for. There's not a blood test. There's not a medical test for autism. So the only way to really know if autism is actually there is through either formal assessment, which I don't really recommend in adults, mainly because there aren't very many providers who are trained to recognize autism in adults and high functioning adults. And I'm going to use the functioning label, which a lot of people don't like. But I was explaining I was actually on a call this morning with a client who did my autism screening consultation, and I was explaining to her that the functioning label has to do with functioning in daily life. So in other words, folks who are able to function as adults in relationships, marriages, they have jobs, they've had a college degree. This is someone who can function in life. Now, that doesn't mean that they don't have a lot of challenges and a lot of struggles, but this is not someone who requires care. So the higher functioning, which is mild Asperger's or autism, these folks, those of you who can have autism and can actually function in life and live on your own, that would be considered mild or high functioning. Moderate is more most people who have moderate autism are probably going to have some kind of care partner for life. And then severe autism is nonverbal usually, and absolutely is going to have to require care. So what I would recommend, a lot of providers are not trained to recognize what this milder end of autism looks like in adults. So unless you are able to really research the providers in your area, I don't know, this is anonymous, so I don't know what part of the world you're in, and find someone that is very well versed in adult high functioning autism, I don't recommend that. And that's why I started offering these screenings to you guys. So that is an option. I can meet with you and or him, preferably him, and do a screening. And so, what's the difference between what I do and a formal assessment? Um, Formal assessment involves a lot of different kinds of testing, IQ testing, memory testing, cognitive processes. Um, Usually, there's an autism assessment instrument. Sometimes the ADOS. There are a couple of different ones. So it's a lot of testing that tells you a lot of information about how the brain is working. But it's really important to do like a background history, a family history, just a lot of gathering of information about how someone functions in life. I don't really think that that's necessary, to be honest. One conversation, two at the most, usually when someone when you're able to spot it and you know what high functioning autism looks like in adults, it's not really necessary to go through all that testing. So what I do is I have people complete the autism quotient, which I walked you guys through a couple of weeks ago. The video is still up if you want to watch it, and if you haven't taken it, you can take it for your partner too. We go through every single question and I explain what the question means. And then I go over all of that. I go over the score and the results, and even we look at your actual question responses to see what flagged you or your partner as having autism. Um, so back to your question though. Well, and I review a lot of other stuff, all that other relationship history and background stuff too. So that's what I do. But back to your question, really, if he's diagnosed with dementia, neurologically speaking, there are you'll need to follow up with a neurologist to look to see and ask questions about whether the brain is showing signs of degeneration. Are they seeing less activity in the brain? In some types of imaging, they can see if the brain is functioning less and less and less, and that's more of a degenerative brain process. And that's not Asperger's. Asperger's is a lifelong developmental, not condition's not even the right word. It's not. I don't believe it's a disorder. It's just a description of the way the brain's wired to process information, and it would have been there all of his life. Now, if he's developing dementia, he may start to the signs of Asperger's may become more obvious because the brain's having to work harder. Any coping skills that he's developed, any scripting, any ways that he's learned how to script, and some people call it mask in a neurotypical world, he may not be as able to do that. So if anybody wants to jump in the chat, feel free to do so. Hi, Tanya. Good to see you. So I'm going to go to the next question since none of you have any comments about that one. All right, so this is kind of a long question, and I will try to summarize it. So this person's saying, when I met my husband, he was sociable. He had a lot of friends, and we went to parties, and he was fun and happy. He was also okay with my friends and my family circle. But I noticed that he didn't have eye contact with my parents and sister at all. I thought he was shy and that he just didn't feel comfortable. But then things got worse when we moved to the U.S. and my family came to visit. And he doesn't like it. He feels like he doesn't fit in, and he's really quiet around them in a way that actually makes other people uncomfortable and frustrated. He looks upset with my close family, but not with other people. Especially when he's with his current friends, he seems okay. But specifically with my family, he's totally awkward, and also with his own family. He doesn't like talking with his mom or brothers either. He just talks to them on social or special occasions, and he looks like he doesn't even want to. When we were dating, he didn't want me to meet his parents, and it took a while because he said his mom was very intrusive, and it would be an issue in our relationship that mom would butt in. He doesn't like conversations and only enjoys working or spending time with our kids. He's a great dad, and I can see that he really tries to understand my feelings, but when we were dating, he was the most caring person. Never showed to be upset. He was the best boyfriend, and sometimes I can see some of those qualities hidden by this overwhelming shadow. I'm not sure what, I think maybe she's thinking like dark cloud. I wonder if these symptoms are of Asperger's, or is it something to do with self-esteem? Thank you for your help. So what I'm going to say here is there's not a lot here that just screams Asperger's at me. What I am hearing is family dysfunction, family of origin. In other words, his mom, dad, brothers, and sisters, his family of origin. There's something there. He's uncomfortable with family stuff. He's uncomfortable with his own family. He doesn't really want to have anything to do with them. He doesn't want to interact. He doesn't really feel comfortable with your family either. But he's comfortable with his friends. So what that tells me is that his definition and his experiences with family haven't been great. And so his definition of what that's like is not good. And so he's uncomfortable with your family too because he doesn't have a model for close family relations. So he doesn't know how to do that. And so, but you're telling me that he's fine with his friends and that he's real social and he's happy. That doesn't really scream Asperger's to me. But the other thing is, you said things changed a bit after, I guess after you got married, I think, and you have children now. So what this sounds like to me is we all have these roles in our mind of what dating is and what a marriage is and who I am as a husband, as a wife, as a father. And sometimes it's really subconscious and we're not aware that we're shifting into a new role. So we have a boyfriend or a girlfriend role, and that's who we show up to be. But then we have a husband or wife role, and we shift into that. And then we have a dad role, and we shift into that. And those roles are influenced by those early relationships. So what does it mean to be a husband? What does it mean to be? Sometimes people are trying to be the opposite of what they witnessed or what they experienced growing up. My dad was a piece of crap, so I don't want to be like that. Or, my mom was horrible to my father, and I don't want to be like that. Sometimes this is totally subconscious, and we're not aware that we're shifting into these roles. So I think it might be helpful to maybe to see a family therapist or a couples therapist and see if the couples therapist is able to help you if you haven't been already with these issues. I think that's probably a better route for you because I'm not really hearing a lot of Asperger's stuff. Now, you're welcome to take the autism quotient, or he can, or you can take it like you're him just to see what kind of score you get and then go from there. But just from what you've written here, I don't see a whole lot of Asperger's. So I'm hoping this is helping the rest of you who are listening as well, because these are the kinds of questions people have when they're not really sure what they're seeing. They're not really sure what's happening in their relationship. So I love these questions, you guys. All right. Does anybody here have a question, or are you guys just going to be voyeurs today and watch and listen? That's okay if that's what you want to do. Okay, next question. My ASD husband, which stands for Autism Spectrum Disorder, does not participate in the bedroom routine for our 3 and 5.5-year-olds. He says good night, and then he goes to bed himself around 8 p.m. I've asked him repeatedly to participate so we can tag team and get things done faster. He said that it's just not going to happen because it will mess up his sleep. Is this just something I will have to live with forever? I feel like my children are suffering as I put my 3-year-old to bed first, and then I'm not even starting bedtime with my 5.5-year-old until usually around 9. So he's not actually falling asleep till 10 or 10:30. I've promised sex afterwards if he helps me. Tried guilting him, telling him our 5.5-year-old is sitting on her tablet alone. I put the 3-year-old to bed, told him he's missing out on creating a bond with his children. Nothing has made him want to participate. Do I need to just come to terms with this being how it will always be? Or is there another way to try and get him to participate and help me out? Please help. All right. So you said he does have autism spectrum. So my understanding is that this is a factor. So what I'm hearing is that your husband has his routine, that his sleep is very important to his routine. And so I will affirm that for a lot of folks on the spectrum, sleep is so important. It's that brain recharge time. And he's aware that that's important. So he's either really aware that it's important, or he really struggles with having to stick with a routine and not being able to stray from that routine. It's also possible that he's extremely tired at night. Okay, Caitlin's saying he's not diagnosed, but we both acknowledge. Okay, so hi Caitlin, thanks for your question. Um, so he's not formally diagnosed, but you both agree that he's on the spectrum. So that tells me all I need to know there. So what I was saying, by the end of the day, he may be extremely spent, like really tired. You too. I know I'm tired at the end of the day. But for someone with autism, getting through the day is like those for those of us who are neurotypical, it's like having to spend the day at this in this crazy room with a disco ball, loud sounds coming, music blaring, lights flashing, and we're trying to have conversations with people, and and we're just doing it all day long. It's just like all this stuff coming at the brain, the sensory system. So by the end of the day, he's probably really tired. Now, you asked me, is there anything that you can do to get his to show him that or I'm sorry, I was reading your comment. Is there anything you can do to get help? So, if you haven't tried this already, asking him for just help is very vague. It's going to be better if you can give him very specifics. And also ask him, so you're saying he goes to bed around 8, and I'm also seeing that you get the first child in the bed around 9. So maybe if you shift their bedtime routine to earlier in the evening, if it's possible to shift the bedtime routine to earlier in the evening, and you give him specific tasks, or if you cannot shift the bedtime routine, give him specific tasks that will help you that he can do before he goes to bed. So, if, for example, if he can lay out their pajamas, or uh, help them brush their teeth. At that point, they should have already eaten. He can help them brush their teeth. If there are specific things that he can do with them before he goes to bed that would take that off of your plate, then identify what those are. Are you going to have to live with some of this? Yes. And that's where it's important to stop. And I don't know if you're familiar with my 2 or 10 model, but stop and think, what parts of this are important to you, and how important are they to you, and how are they impacting your life and your children's lives, and rank that on a scale of 2 to 10, 2 being not really at all, 10 being this is a deal breaker and I can't live this way. And that sometimes can help us put things in perspective of how big of a problem is this. I'm not in any way minimizing this experience for you. This is a big deal. You're parenting alone to put your kids to bed. So talk to him about what is it about going to bed at 8 o'clock. He says that he can't miss his sleep. Okay, but then ask him if he's willing to do specific things earlier on to repeat that. But I also want to go back to, you said, I feel like my children are suffering. So as a mom, what I hear a little bit there is projecting suffering, that you're worried about, you're fearful that your children are suffering. My question is, are they really? Do your kids really seem to be suffering? Maybe they are. I don't know. You're there. Is the child that you're putting to bed at 10 o'clock really struggling to get up in the mornings, struggling to be refreshed and awake? If those types of things are affecting them, then it is important to adjust the schedule so that your children get enough rest. But if your children aren't really suffering, if they seem to be refreshed, if they don't seem to be bothered by this, then that's something you may be able to let go, and it will feel a lot better to you if you let go of that. The other thing is that you feel like you're telling your husband that he's missing out on the bonding time with children. So what I'm hearing you say there is that you see this as a bonding time with your kids. There are other ways that he can bond with them. So I would focus less, just even for yourself, on him missing out on bonding time, because really he may not be capable of bonding with them at this time of night. He may be completely tapped out mentally, emotionally, physically, and so bonding with his children late at night just literally may not be possible. So focus on how he can bond with them at other times. I'm just going to recap really quickly. Focus on how he can bond with them at other times, and then specific tasks that he can do to help you prepare for bedtime. So hopefully that helped. Do you have any questions, or does anybody else have any questions? All right. Well, let's move on to the next question then. You guys are quiet today. Let's see. Okay. I want to make sure I'm not skipping one. Hi, Kim. Oh, wait. I don't know if you. Okay, you are Kim, I think. All right, you said that is super helpful. You're right that I may be projecting some of the suffering. It's what we do. Be observant about yourself on that. We as moms tend to do that. And so when we do that, though, we're not creating misery, but we're stressing about something that may not really be happening. So pay attention to whether or not your kids really are suffering. Hi, Jalitza. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I butcher names on here. Okay, you guys drop me any questions if you have any, and I'm going to go on to the next question. So this is another person, anonymous, and this person says, would you please talk about how to resume a sex life with our Aspie husbands? Mine seems to have entirely lost interest. He says he's quite open, but I don't believe him. And our sex life before it vanished. It sounds like she's saying our sex life has vanished. Seems like it had lost. Oh, our sex life before, when we were still having sex. It seems like it had lost any emotional connection and was strictly physical, and that felt horrid to me. Okay. So the question is, so sex is a pretty big hot topic for folks in Asperger's relationships. We're all over the place. And guys, neurotypical relationships are all over the place too. So Asperger's is just another layer. When there's any disruption of sex life, or maybe it was never really great to start with, we have to start with the root reason, the why. We have to look at the why and not the what. So, well, the what we're painfully aware of. This is a woman, it sounds like, who is the sex life is he's no longer interested, or he says he is, but she's like, I don't see it. And it was really physical before. So the why is this? Why is it not happening? There could be lots of different reasons. And by the way, I do have a video here on YouTube about sex in autism spectrum relationships. So be sure and take a look at that as well if this is a problem for any of you. But sexuality has so many different layers. First of all, there's the physical layer, and you're saying that that it was purely physical, but within that, there are sensory issues going on with sex. So sounds, smells, touch, motion, expectations, goals, all sorts of things that we bring to our sex life. And for men, I don't know what the age is of this couple, but sometimes testosterone hormones change too, and when those when those testosterone levels go down, it can really impact the desire, which that desire is it's that idea. Oh, I'm interested. I want to do this. And so sometimes when testosterone goes down, it doesn't occur to someone as much. It's just not that desire. But then it can be awakened. It's like most neurotypical women can relate to this anyway. We may not initially feel aroused, but then we can be talked into it sometimes. It can be like that for men sometimes when testosterone goes down. So there are lots of different reasons to figure out why your sex life is not happening. Is it the time of day that you usually have sex? Is this a time of day that now he's really tired? Or I will say this, back to testosterone, it's usually really low in the evenings. It peaks in the mornings, testosterone does. There we go. And then it goes down throughout the day. So men who, as they age, a lot of times are going to be a lot more interested in the mornings because that does the testosterone's there, and less and less and less and less and less interested throughout the day and into the evening. So if you have routinely had sex at night when you go to bed, then a man may or may not be as interested. And so that could be related. It could have to do with any new changes in your relationship, in your housing situation. There's lots and lots and lots of variables. So, what I really encourage all couples to do is to be detectives to understand why. Now, this gets tricky because people feel criticized. If he's not interested in sex and you are, and you start questioning, why don't you have sex with me anymore? He may feel criticized. But you have the right to feel like, I want to have sex. Why aren't we having sex? So the approach is pretty important. And I cover this in communication transformation, you guys. It's super important for us to take responsibility for how we approach our partner, whether we're neurotypical or Aspie. We have to take responsibility for whether or not we approach in a critical, harsh, why don't you, you never, I wish you. Those are all you. But when we approach with, I really miss having sex with you, and I'm curious about what are some reasons why you're not as interested or you don't initiate. I'm not upset with you. You might be, but I'm not accusing you of anything. I just would like to know. I'm curious, and I'm curious if there's something we could do to make this better. Because you're saying that he says he's willing, that he's open, but if his definition of how sex is supposed to go is the way it has been, and for some reason that's not working for him, he may actually be willing, but not know how to change it up so that you guys are actually having sex again. If you're expecting him to initiate, for example, and he's forgetting to initiate, and then you're thinking, well, we're not, you don't actually initiate it yourself, then that could be a reason. So, a conversation about expectations can be helpful. Do you expect me to initiate? Would you like for me to initiate? How would that feel to you? When is the best time of day for you? What kind of things impact you wanting to have sex? Now, going back to it felt strictly physical, and you said that felt horrid to me. That is something that can be sometimes difficult for folks on the spectrum because if there's a lot of sensory stuff going on, a lot of things to be aware of, sometimes folks on the spectrum have poor psychomotor skills. In other words, they're not as coordinated. Some are actually really coordinated. It's kind of the one way or the other. But if there's a difficulty in knowing how to move my body in a way that works, or even how to use my tongue for oral sex, or just how to go about pleasing my partner, then this is something that's like constantly running. The script is running, and so it can seem mechanical because for a neurotypical person that all just kind of flows and happens. But even neurotypical people get all up in their head and are thinking thoughts, and it can get, it can be, there can be a lot going on up here. And so, but the mechanics may not be as difficult. So sometimes when a person on the spectrum is having sex, there's so much going on to make that happen that to actually emotionally connect with you right now, that's a level I can't even handle if I have Asperger's. And then the other piece of it is, how capable is your husband of actual emotional connection? Do you have that emotional connection outside of sex? Is this something that it happens even outside of sex? Because if it doesn't happen outside of sex, it's going to be expecting it to happen during sex it's not very likely. So where you want to start is creating that emotional connection outside of sex first. And there are varying degrees of ability for people to connect emotionally. And a lot comes around also to our expectations of what that even means. what is emotional connection, and how does that look? How does that feel? How do I experience it? How does my partner experience it? And if your expectations are one thing and his are another, you may not be on the same page about that. That's what communication transformation, the coaching program, does for you guys. It gives you a script to actually start having these conversations in a way that you can actually hear each other and understand each other. Let me check the comments here. Hi, Robert. Good to see you. And you were telling Caitlin that specific tasks are a really good idea. So, yeah, I agree there. All right. 8888, you're back. Um, I think I get usernames confused, but I think I know who you are. But you said I find it the opposite because I don't feel the emotional connection with my Aspie partner. I can't make myself want it, wanting to with him, even if he wants it. So I think you are the neurotypical partner, I think. And you're saying I really, it's hard for me to actually want to have sex with my partner. And if I'm hearing you correctly, that's what you mean. And that's usually because of the disconnect that's happening in the relationship. It's hard to feel emotionally connected to our partners if there's a lot of disconnect and confusion and chaos and conflict. It's hard for a lot of us to want to go hop in the sack and connect emotionally. So we have to start with the basics and start with the foundation of the relationship. Get those communication lines working so that you can connect, understand, have shared meaning, and clear up the miscommunications and misunderstandings that have likely been there for a long time before you knew about autism, or even if you did know about it, but you didn't know how to interact in a way where you understood each other. Hi, Taylor. Good to see you as always. You said, yes, my partner used to say he felt more connected to me after sex versus during, maybe because the script running in his head was kind of stressful. So you're saying he felt more connected afterwards than during. And I'd say that's very possible. So it was in the kind of the afterglow, when it's all over that, oh, we can kind of cuddle, and then all of the mechanics are over and we can just lay here and be close. And there's also been the physiological release at that point, which releases, uh, oh my gosh, my brain has lost, there's a word. There's a hormone that's released that's the bonding hormone during sex, and I cannot think of it right now. If anybody knows, drop it in the comment. But it's the same bonding hormone that's released when women nurse. We release it. It's not dopamine. It's another one, and I'm just brain dumb right now. Um, but it's released. It's the bonding hormone, oxytocin. Thank you. That's it. It's late for me. Yes, and endorphins. Absolutely. Dopamine is released. Endorphins are released. All of this happens during sex, but oxytocin is specifically a bonding hormone. So when it happens, like I said, during nursing, it happens for women, especially when they respond to a crying child, that hormone's released, and it happens during sex. And actually, women get a bigger dump of oxytocin than men usually, but men do get a release of oxytocin, and it is a hormone that is known to bond us to the person that we're with in that moment. So that's that's a good reason why he would be having those feelings after sex, because that's in his bloodstream at that moment. All right, let's go back and see. Hi, Gigi, plus Gigi. You said, can you talk about how to set boundaries and ask for what we need, being willing to take your course uh, when they feel so much like we are trying to fix them? What's the method to make this a win-win? So you're trying to get your partner to take my course, and what she's referring to is the communication transformation course, which is that foundational course. But I'm hearing that the block there is that he or she, that your partner feels like you're trying to fix them. And so the way to approach a partner is that it's not about fixing anybody. There's nothing wrong with anybody. There's nothing wrong with him. There's nothing wrong with you. But it's about learning how to improve your connection, how to be more connected. It's about you learning more and understanding more about him, and for him to be able to understand more about you. And if anybody's here who's been through my communication course, they can tell you that it's not about fixing anybody at all. It's about gaining an understanding. It's about clarity. It's about learning how to identify the gaps in communication, where they're happening, and why. Because for whatever reason, you're not understanding each other. And so it doesn't mean that anybody's right or wrong. It just means, okay, it's like if you go to another country, and you can use this analogy. If you go to another country, and I'm an English speaker, if I move to Germany, well, I don't know German. So I can try to get by communicating, and most Germans know English, but let's say I go somewhere that English is not very predominant. I can try to get by interacting and doing charades and whatever, but it would make sense for me to take a course in that language of the country that I'm going to live in, just to at least try to learn some basic communication skills. It's the same with relationships. If you're not speaking the same language, and maybe he doesn't even want to, maybe he doesn't believe he's autistic, okay, this communication program works for everybody, any relationship. I specifically speak to my participants as if someone is neurotypical and one is autistic, but it gives a foundation for pretty much any relationship that's that there's a difficulty in relating. So I would use just the, hey, this is not about anybody, nothing being wrong with anybody. It's just about figuring out how to improve our relationship so that we both are heard. Tell him that you, if he takes this with you, that you will actually hear him, that he will be more understood. You will actually learn how to understand him better. So what's, what does he have to lose? Um, oh, and you also said setting boundaries and asking for what you need. So that's a different question. So basically, this goes back to my 2 or 10. How important is this to you? And how much is it impacting your life? And you tell him this scale. 10 means it's a deal breaker and I really can't live without this and I have to end this relationship. 2 is that it really doesn't matter at all. And everything else, 8, 9, it's really important. It's a huge thing. I'm not sure if I can live this way. 3 or 4 is like, oh, it'd be really, really awesome, but I could live without it. So tell him the scale and tell him where you are on that scale. Because I will say this, motivation to change often comes from being uncomfortable. As parents, it's an important thing for us to realize that our kids need to be uncomfortable in order to learn how to solve a problem. And we try to remove that discomfort from them sometimes because we don't want to see our kids being uncomfortable. But just think about it. If I'm perfectly comfortable, if life is good and someone's taking care of everything for me, I don't have any incentive to try to make things better. So what I have seen as a relationship coach is a lot of people, a lot of partners who aren't willing to go to coaching or to get help. The reason is because a neurotypical partner is accommodating and accommodating and accommodating and making life pretty easy for the autistic partner. So why do they go and help? There's no incentive. So a lot of folks, when a neurotypical partner finally realizes I can't live this way, and it's not, I'm not a fan of manipulative ultimatums. Don't threaten to leave if that's not what you've really chosen to do. But if you assess your situation, you use your 2 or 10, and you realize, I really can't live this way. I really can't live as we are unless something changes about how we interact and who we are to each other. And then you communicate that to him, but you have to be truly there. I've seen so many couples come to me at that point when autistic partner is realizing, oh, I actually do have to do this in order for my marriage or my relationship not to end. And it's that discomfort that motivates. But don't be given ultimatums or empty threats that just to get a response. That's not okay. That's not cool. Not to say that you were doing that, but that's just, I'm talking to everybody here. Oh, wow. Okay, we have other comments. Let's see. So, Jaleesa, you're saying, how can I approach my husband to get diagnosed without making him feel I'm overreacting or passing judgment because things that I've seen? So, that basically comes down to if there are differences that you've noticed, that what I would say, okay, look, I've been reading, I don't think there's anything wrong with you, but I'm noticing that whatever the things are that you're noticing, and say, I would love for us to get some clarity so we'll have a framework to use in our relationship so that we can really get so that we'll understand each other better, so that I can understand you and you can understand me better. I always use the terminology and language of clarity, because that's really what it is. It's not about saying you don't need to go get diagnosed because something's wrong with you. I wouldn't want to go get diagnosed if someone said that to me. It's more about getting clarity and having this framework to understand each other. So it's don't approach it from a something's wrong with you standpoint, but just I want us to understand you and you to understand me and us to understand each other, and then this will just help us in our relationship. And you can even say, I don't know if you know anything about Asperger's, but I was looking into it, and there's some really amazing people with Asperger's that have done great things in the world. It's not a bad thing necessarily, but it can also cause some major challenges. And people do have challenges with it that maybe you feel you have or not. But it's just let's see. I think it would be great for us to figure this out together. Hopefully that's helpful. All right, so my next question is from Kel. I'm just going to call you Kel. How do you help your ASD partner in regards to wanting them to show more effort or interest in getting a diagnosis? This is the same question. If the ASD partner still doesn't believe they're on the spectrum, same question. You're asking pretty much the same thing as my previous person. And one thing, though, I will add, your question, you're asking about effort and interest. We can never motivate anybody. We absolutely, no one person can motivate and cause another human being to have more motivation or more interest. But we can ask in a different way so that you're clarifying what it is you're wanting from them, what it is you're suggesting. Because if the perception is that you're suggesting something's wrong with me, then I don't want to do that. But if you clarify what it is you're looking for, that what you're after, then that's going to change the whole dynamic in the communication. And this is what we learn in communication transformation. It's not being fake, it's not being phony, but it's also learning what we're doing as neurotypicals. I had to learn this all myself too in my Asperger's relationships, and I'm surrounded by Aspies in my life. I have a daughter who's 18. Her dad is on the spectrum. We're divorced, but we're still very much in contact, and I didn't know he was on the spectrum before we divorced. And boy, would that have been a helpful framework. But I didn't have anybody like me to help us, and all the counseling we did didn't help. My best friend, she's a woman on the spectrum. Her son's on the spectrum, two of actually. So I had to learn how to take responsibility for my own communication and how I approach. And it's actually really helped me in my neurotypical relationships too, to be honest. It's just basic fundamental stuff. All right. By the way, if you're here and you emailed a question, I do have one more question that I haven't addressed, so I haven't forgotten about you. But let me go through the comments here live first. So 8888, you're saying, I think when resentment levels are high, they are more likely to refuse what you suggest. Yeah, that's true, and so are we. When I'm resentful of somebody, I'm not as open to listening to them. So, there again, I want you to back up. If there's a high level of resentment, instead of approaching with requests or demands or you need to this or we need to this, back up and start really looking at the roots of what is contributing to the resentment. Why is the resentment there? I'm not saying that anybody, again, nobody's really, I don't like the word wrong because it implies just, it's a negative word. You are probably making mistakes. You are probably communicating in ways that is hurting more than helping, but it's not because you intend it that way. It's because you guys and myself, before I learned all this, nobody taught you how to communicate. Nobody taught you how, what good communication, healthy communication. You may have had healthy communication in your families or with other people, but this is a totally different kind of relationship. So you can't know what you don't know. So, but it's important to learn. And even when we have our partners are on the spectrum, I'm speaking to you neurotypical folks right now. When our partners are on the spectrum, we still have to learn what that means and how to interact. Now, a lot of my neurotypical partners say, "Why do I have to do all the work? I shouldn't have to do all the work." Well, you don't. I've I've had so many people. I've actually had quite a few people say, "Jodi, I don't want to have to do all the work. I don't like it. Why is everybody always saying?" Well, I've never said that you have to do all the work, and I don't know where you're hearing that, and maybe none of you here are, but both of you have to do the work. But the only person that we can control is ourselves, and so we have to do our work, and then our partner's responsible for doing their work. The thing is, when we change up how we come to the relationship, how we interact, the relationship is forced to change in some way. That's systems theory. When one part of a system changes, the whole system changes in some way. A relationship is a system. So when you learn and do your share and do your part, that's why you can do communication transformation just by yourself and really, really make a huge impact on the relationship. I've had many, many neurotypical partners go through communication transformation, and then 6 months later, they're showing back up with their autistic partner, and the partner's like, "I saw some changes. There's some differences here, and I want to know what that's all about. I want to know what's going on here," and they want to learn. And so, once you've been through the program, you guys, you're in for life, and so is your partner. So you go through it, and then if it's 6 months, if it's 8 months, if it's a year, when your partner's ready, you're still in the program and you come right back to the next coaching group and you go through it again. But it starts with that foundation of learning how to interact. And so, like what you're saying about resentment, you got to get to the what. What's the resentment from? Why is it there? Taylor says, is there a good way to is there a good way to request something of your partner that they don't already do at all in the relationship? I've heard you talk about telling your partner you like when they do a said thing to get more. Wait, let me read that. I've heard you talk about telling your partner you like when they do certain things to get more. But you're talking about, so that's like positive reinforcement. When you do this, I like that. But you're talking about when they're not doing something at all. That's just basic communication, Taylor. That's just, hey, I would love it if you fill in the blank. I really like it when fill in the blank. Is that something that you're open to doing? Got to be comfortable with making those bids. That's called a bid. That's a request. It's a bid. It's not a demand. The difference is, why don't you ever? I I need you to. I really don't like the phrase "I need you to" because then we're kind of making a demand on somebody. But so there's a difference between "I need you to" and "I would really love it if you." That's a bid, and then it's our partner's choice to honor it or not. So just ask. Okay, Daniel says, "Hi, Daniel. Long distance relationship with one I believe has high functioning autism. He doesn't talk much at all. Does that have a lot to do with it? Sometimes he seems cold with bursts of passion with feelings." I'm going to go ahead and read your next comment. "He works at night. He started to tell me he has meltdowns. He might know he has it. He said people he gets tired for answers, explanations, and to stop tricks. He said people get tired, let's see, for answers, explanations, and to stop triggering them. So people are telling him, I think, to stop triggering them. He texts me more. He sends quick texts so fast. He's in touch a few times a day, but very short. Um, okay, of him. Thank you. Okay, first of all, long distance is hard for everybody, much less if there may be autism there. It's really, really hard to get to know and understand what's going on for somebody when you're long distance. So, first of all, that's a big barrier, even for neurotypicals, for it's everybody. It's a big barrier. So, you're saying that he doesn't talk much at all. So, when you say talk, I'm not sure if you're talking about texting or on the phone or FaceTime. I will say that a lot of my Aspie folks really struggle with phone conversations or live dialogue that's not face to face, even live dialogue that is face to face. But when it's on the phone or even something like FaceTime where there can be laggy internet stuff, a lot of my folks with autism say that they don't know when it's their turn. It's they don't know when it's their turn, and they already struggle with nonverbals. And so when there aren't even any in-person nonverbals to attend to, it's even harder to know, am I being asked a question, or was that a statement, or are we moving on to the next conversation, the next topic? And so a lot of folks on the spectrum just don't. They just don't want to get into live conversation. Even live texting can be uncomfortable. You're saying that he does fire back pretty quickly with texts, but um, they're short and sweet. So he doesn't get into these long conversations. It's hard to say if he's on the spectrum. It's possible. He says that he has meltdowns. And so for an adult, I'm assuming, I don't know how old you guys are, but he's got a job, it sounds like. So for adults on the spectrum, meltdowns are not really common. And there's a difference between a meltdown and an anxiety, like a panic attack, and just a temper tantrum, okay? And these are hard to tell the difference sometimes. Um, a temper tantrum is just when somebody's just ticked off because they're not getting what they want, and they're just mad. They're just mad because they're not getting what they want, and it's an immaturity type thing. That's temper tantrum. Adults are capable of them. We usually have less and less of them as adults. Um, a meltdown is a sensory overload. So a meltdown is when the brain is completely overloaded with sensory information or cognitive processing. So either there's a lot of sound, there's a lot of noise, there's cognitive processes happening, like I'm having to have an interaction that I can't quite process what to say or what's happening, situational overwhelm, what's going on. And it's like the brain literally goes into a complete traffic jam. And what that looks like is it looks oftentimes like a temper tantrum, but it's literally just an overload, system overload. And so it's usually not in response to just being angry about something, although sometimes meltdowns can happen when there's a disruption in a routine, um, being interrupted in any way. Um, so meltdowns can be triggered and prompted from frustration and anger, but it's typically because when that routine is interrupted, then there's an overwhelm. There's overwhelm because this is not my routine, and I don't, my brain, and so that's a meltdown. A panic attack is similar, but it's anxiety related, and usually um, there is our alarm system in our body is constantly scanning our environment for danger. It's a built-in. It's important for our survival. We need this, and so some people have an overactive alarm. Some people's alarm system is just, and this can be from trauma history. If we've had any kind of trauma, then our alarm system sometimes is on hyper alert, and that can be full blown PTSD, which is post traumatic stress disorder, or it can just be slightly overactive. And so the alarm system's constantly scanning the environment for a potential threat or danger, and that can be physical danger or that can be emotional or situational. I'm going to lose my job, and then we also have the layer of our thoughts, which we have self inner dialogue where we think about what ifs. We're what ifing. What if this happens? What if that happens? Or maybe I should have. Shoulds and what ifs fuel anxiety and fuel our alarm system into believing that we're in danger. And then a panic attack is when we go into full blown fight or flight mode. We've got adrenaline dumped into our system, cortisol dumped in, that basically speeds up our heart rate, speeds up our respiration, slows down our digestion, slows down blood flow to the frontal lobes, which is where we have rational reasoning. And this is why we say stupid, dumb things when we're stressed, because there's no blood flow here. And it can come out in the form of just a full-blown shutdown, and it can actually feel like a heart attack because we start breathing very shallow, and it can be painful in the chest. So those are the three differences: the anxiety, panic attack, meltdown, and temper tantrum. So I would want to clarify what he means by meltdown. What's actually happening? What triggers them? What happens for him in the moment? To understand more. And so you need a little bit more information to learn if he's actually on the spectrum. And I'd study up on it some more. Come back next week and ask more questions. Hi, Thomas. Thomas is saying it helps me. I lost you. There we go. It helps me when my neurotypical is direct and to the point rather than being vague or implied language. Yes, yes, yes. Neurotypical folks, listen to this man. We are so used to using our passive voices, and I'm from the South. I know you guys can hear it in my dialect. I'm from the Southern United States, and we're polite down here. And what that means is we tiptoe around what we actually need to say in order to say it in a polite way. And autistic folks down here are like, what are you trying to say? Neurotypical partners, just put it out there. Just be specific and blunt, and you may feel like you're being abrasive. You may feel like you're being rude, but your autistic partner wants you to tell them exactly what you're trying to say. They do not want to have to guess and figure it out because it's very difficult. That innuendo that is in implied meaning and innuendo that is built into the neurotypical language does not exist for so many folks on the spectrum. It's very hard to decipher. And so we automatically speak in inferences and implied meaning, and we talk around things and use cliches. And that's really just going to lead to a lot of confusion. Thank you, Thomas, for bringing that up. All right, next question. How do you deal with past hurts in the relationship if your ASD partner never thought they were in the wrong from their perspective? Okay, we deal with this in communication transformation. It's stage 3 of communication. There are 4 stages. I'll go over them. What we bring to it. So this is like our everything from our values, our intentions, our goals, our meanings, our definitions. There's tons of things we actually bring to every single interaction, each one of us. Number 2 is how we actually interact with each other. And we've talked about this a good bit today. The words we use, how we talk to each other. That's the most commonly stage. That's the most common stage that is addressed in counseling, is how you're interacting. Stage 3 is what you're talking about, and that's the meaning that we take from our interactions. The meaning, the perceptions we have of what is actually happening. What actually happened in that interaction. You're saying your partner doesn't believe that he was in the wrong, and so his perception of what was said and done and your perception of what was said or done are totally different, because somehow in stage 2, the way you interact, you're misunderstanding each other, and that's influenced by stage 1, which is what you bring to it. Sometimes it's just the definitions of words. You can literally use words differently and really misunderstand each other. And so how do you get past the hurt is you have to start really unpacking what the actual meanings are in your conversations, because you may have felt hurt by something your partner did when his intention or his meaning was nothing remotely close to what you perceived. That doesn't mean you're wrong in your perception, but it also doesn't mean that he actually hurt you. You're coming to it with totally different intentions, totally different perceptions, and so you have to start unpacking what those actual meanings are. I've worked with couples in private coaching. Stage 4 is how we recall it and how we remember our relationship. It's the narratives that we have about our relationships. And I remember one woman saying to me, she's like, I really understand now that so much of what I thought has happened in our marriage. And this couple was in their 60s. And she said, I'm realizing so much of what I thought happened and so much of how I've been devastated by what my husband said and done to me. I'm realizing now that I completely misread it. And so I have situation after situation after situation that now when I think back, I'm starting to realize what actually happened there is not at all what I interpreted it to be. So my narrative, that hurt that I have felt for years, is starting to be completely rewritten now. And so that's what happens. And it's the same for our autistic partners too, because they have their own narratives too based on what they're perceiving. So this communication piece, you guys, I can't. Somebody emailed me today and said, she asked me what our coaching options are. She emailed my support team, got this email, and she asked for us to clarify what our coaching options are and what the fees are. And so my assistant wrote her back with, these are the different things we offer right now, and here's the cost. And she wrote me back or she wrote us back and said, my assistant forwarded this to me. She said, okay, I think maybe the 2-month intensive is best, but honestly, this just feels like you're advertising to me. And so I wanted to say, I keep talking to you guys about my communication program. And I do this not because I'm trying to make money off of you. Look, I'm here free every week. I talk to my group, my Facebook group, off and on throughout the week. Sometimes I'm live, sometimes it's in communication. All that's free. I have a communication quick start that goes into these 4 stages that's $14. I am not in any way a wealthy person for what I'm doing, but the reason I keep telling you guys about this communication program is not to try to sell you anything. It's because I see it working. And I know that it works when 2 people come to it with an open mind, and oftentimes when one partner comes to it ready to grow and learn. I see it working, and that's what my job, that's what I'm here to do. That's why I created this program, was to give you guys a shot in your relationship. Because if you don't figure this out, you guys, most of you are headed for divorce, or your relationship's ending because you just can't survive. So many people come to me in their retirement years and they finally raised their kids and they're trying to be together, and they don't, they can't even understand each other at all. They're totally on separate planets. So this is where we start. So if you want to know more about it, it's $14 to get started. You guys, go to my website. Daniel says he gets overwhelmed. I'm the opposite. I talk and I'm so expressive. He says he likes it, but he barely talks. So he may actually really like it when you talk, but he may struggle to actually communicate back. So, but it sounds like the overwhelm piece is what's happening for him. Google sensory processing. I'm going to put put in the chat, processing disorder in adults. Google that, because that's part of what causes that overload. Robert says, can the ASD person go through the communication course first and have the NT person see? Yeah, absolutely. Either partner can go through this course, and it's going to make a change in the relationship. And Robert, I really, really would love for you to do this. I mean, I know you, I've met you, and I think this would be a really good program for you. So give that some thought. As a matter of fact, you showed up on my to-do list today to reach back out to you and see how you're doing. So yes, absolutely. I've had autistic folks go through it first, and had neurotypical partners who are kind of checked out and over it, and then their autistic partner starts changing things up, and the neurotypical's like, well, hold on, what's going on here? Daniel says you're so helpful. Thank you, and I'm so glad that you're here, and I'm glad you're asking questions. Yay. Okay, I have one more question, guys, from the emails that I'm going to go over, and then we'll have to call it a wrap. So I have a question here that says, are there any definitive or key characteristics that can help one determine if your spouse has autism or narcissistic personality disorder without testing, and that need to be present to help make this clear for a neurotypical spouse in order to determine what they're dealing with? Okay, this is a big question. So she's talking about autism versus narcissism, and this comes up a lot. I actually posted about this in my Facebook group last week. I think a lot of you got an email if you're on my email list about it. And I have a course about it too that walks you through. There's a quiz in there, and it's several modules, video modules of me. Because here's the thing, autism is a totally different spectrum from narcissism, but it can seem similar because of what's called theory of mind, where autistic folks struggle to understand the perspective of their partners. And it's literally because of this struggle to actually recognize that there is another perspective. So partners feel they feel like they're being gaslighted, which is when our reality is questioned, when we're told that what we know to be reality is not true. It's very confusing. The difference is narcissistic folks do this intentionally to control and manipulate, whereas autistic folks are not intending to do harm. Now, there's a caveat. It is possible for someone to be both autistic and have narcissistic traits. That's a very toxic individual. And I go through all of that in this course. It's too much to talk about here, but the number one, you asked for key characteristics. The number one thing that I would look for is intentionality. Is your partner, do you really feel like your partner is intentionally trying to harm you, intentionally trying to confuse you, intentionally wanting you to be upset, intentionally wanting you to feel bad about yourself? It's about intent. Or is your partner walking all over your feelings without realizing it, or doing things, saying something didn't happen, or you're not remembering something correctly, or why don't you, questioning your intelligence because they truly don't understand and are not getting you, but they're not intentionally. So many women come to me and say, I know my husband loves me. He cares about me. But then all this stuff happens, and it's so confusing. And then other people come and say, my husband and my wife, this happens for men too. My wife actually, it really, I'm pretty sure that my pain feels good to her, that she seeks out intentionally wanting me to hurt. That's more narcissistic. So look at the intention. And that the course, guys, that walks you through it is on the website too. Just go to membership and courses at the top. Thomas is saying small talk feels like nails on a chalkboard for a lot of ASDs. That's very true. Chit chat, small talk. It's like, why are we doing this? Why are we having this conversation? It's so pointless. I get it. I'm neurotypical and I can chit chat, but I also understand why it's a problem for you guys. And you're saying intentional manipulation for their own gain equals narcissistic behaviors. Yeah. So Well, autistic folks can manipulate for gain. We all actually do that. Manipulation is not a bad word, really. It's what we do when we say or do something in order to get something else. It's little kids are being manipulative when they throw a tantrum in the grocery store because they want candy. They're trying to get their mom to give them candy, and because their mom wants them to stop embarrassing her. That's manipulative. But as a little kid, toxic? No. And as we grow up, we still do things to manipulate a situation to get what we want. That's not automatically toxic. It's not automatically narcissistic, and it's not automatically autistic. But we all do this. The narcissistic piece is when the manipulation is with the intent to harm someone else or to gain at the expense of someone else. So I'm manipulating, I'm getting something from it, and it's at your expense, and I don't care. Or I kind of enjoy it. I kind of enjoy that this is harming you. You see the difference? All right, guys, great conversation. I will see you here next week. Um, please consider jumping in that coaching group on Thursday where you actually get to talk with me and not me at you. You'll need a basic membership for that. $45, be one of the best $45 you'll ever spend, in my opinion. If you have any questions about any of these other things that I'm talking about, the coaching program, just shoot us an email at the support email. It's in the feed here. It's on the website, spectrumrelationships.com. I've got an awesome assistant, and probably about to bring on somebody else too. So anyway, it's really great talking to you guys tonight. It's evening for me. I'm going to go eat some dinner, and I look forward to seeing you guys here next week. Thank you, Jalitza. Bye, you guys.